first step, I'm gonna pick out my colors. Now that I've got all my colors picked out, I'm gonna set those aside and get my surface ready. I already knew that you have to start out with a piece of felt as your base. I also have this, which again, did not come in the kit. It's an embroidery hoop. I felt like it might be a nice option to kind of frame my artwork, so I just loosely traced around that and cut out the approximate area that I have to work with. This is all I need for right now. I'm gonna start with this lovely dark pink wool. You just take a smallish clump of wool, break out your multi-stabber, and then simply start stabbing it. And I'm just gonna start adding and blending in more colors and building up the wool to create my background layer. I'm trying to blend the colors together a little bit by adding thin strands of each color kind of back and forth and over and under each other. And honestly, I'm getting it, you know? I'm starting to get the hang of this pretty quickly. Okay, and this is how the background is looking. And now for the subject of this painting. I'm bringing out the white wool, and I'm going to use some very thin strands to create an outline, a sketch of sorts. It's a bunny. All right, bunny head is done, and now I'm just gonna start throwing on some little details, which I was a little bit nervous about, but it's really more of the same thing. You kind of just form the wool into the shape you want using your little fingers, stab it a few hundred times, and bada bing, it's there. Okay, bunny face is done. She needs a little accessory, so I took some purple wool and created the shape of a little bow. Now just going around the edges and securing any loose hairs. Now I just need to peel this up. Oh no, it feels stuck. We're just gonna carefully peel the felt off the stabbing cushion. It was stuck on there a lot more firmly than I expected, but it did completely peel off without incident, leaving these very interesting fuzz spikes coming out of the back. Fascinating. Clearly, we've got to do something about those scraggly edges, and that's where the embroidery hoop comes in. Okay, so just close this up. Oh, this was actually a lot harder than I thought it would be because the wool adds so much thickness. It makes it quite difficult to close, but I did get it secured in there. And now we can go around and trim off that crazy excess fuzz. There we are. My first wool painting project complete. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna tape off the stainless steel rim because I don't trust myself not to get paint all up on there. And here's where I start trying to be all like precise all of a sudden, acting like this is some complex calculation. I'm just creating a line around the bottle, and I just want to make sure that it stays level and doesn't get all crooked. I want to create a sunset look on the top, so I'm painting a nice pink, orange, yellow, green, blue gradient.
That's a rainbow.
Under the sunset, I'm painting the ocean. I'm going to keep the logo visible, but I am going right over top of the words at the bottom. We don't need those, and those are just going to interrupt my design more than anything, so they can yeet. Now, one thing I noticed rather quickly is that the paint scratches off of the bottle super easily. So this happened, which I was kind of surprised by because I hadn't seen anybody else mention that, but it was definitely something that I had to be constantly aware of. So once I had finished one side, I gotta turn it over and then like do my best to try to make it like a seamless connection. So I've got a kind of rough start for the background all the way around, and now I'm just gonna focus on the front side and start bringing in more of the details. So I'm doing an ocean scene. I thought I was so clever because, you know, it's a water bottle and then the ocean
is water.
But I'm actually doing an under the sea scene, which I haven't seen. So as usual, I'm just kind of making this design up out of my head. There's always a good risk of making something that just looks jacked up. I moved down to the ocean floor, and this was quite the journey. What the heck am I doing down there? Are those butt cheeks I see?
Don't act like you don't like them. You know you do.
I'm sketching out some little sea creatures very carefully so that I don't scratch the paint off completely. Anyway, you may notice that I ended up laying down some parchment paper because the paint on the back of the bottle kept on sticking to the pink paper paper and it was pulling the paint off, so the parchment paper was just there to keep that from happening again. I've added some standard ocean creatures here. We've got a clownfish, jellyfish, goldfish, seahorse. I added a bunch of little bubbles, which I think really helped to create more of that underwater look that I was going for. Now I'm turning back to the front and I'm using a Posca pen to clean up around the logo because I've just made a mess of it at this point, and signing my initials, and now I get to peel off the tape. And to seal the paint in, I'm going to be using this Liquitex varnish. This is definitely a critical step because without the varnish, this paint job would last a whole 2 days before being completely scratched to pieces. So I'm making sure to cover every inch really well. I'm going to start by drawing out all the squares and separate them into groups for each side, and then plan out which characters I want to use specifically by drawing out every single one. Now, here's the twist. I'm going to be doing this digitally. I'm going to be using Procreate, and in order to set up my document properly, I need to do some quick measurements. I want to do a good job, but it's best to keep these simple. The image is ultimately going to be so small, tiny details are definitely out of the question. You won't even be able to see them. I am slightly confused about how this idea got spread around. So I have this drawing footage that continues on forever. So if you are new here, you've probably already gathered this, but yes, these are all completely original characters of mine that I've created throughout my videos. I've finally finished all the designs that I need for this project. So we have to magically transport these out of the iPad, bippity boppity, whatever, and boom, they've been printed out. And I've printed these all on sticker paper, bringing back the Rubik's Cube. Hi, it's been a while. And sticking the first square in place. Oh, it's a moment and it's magical. But let's just focus on the interesting part, which was actually sticking the stickers in place. Just the assembly of this thing took almost a full day, but this was actually kind of satisfying to do. I'd already gotten used to the idea that this video was a huge time commitment, so whatever. And it was such a relief to see this thing finally coming together and being on the last step. All of my hard work finally wrapping up and getting put to use. I wasn't sure if I was ever gonna finish this. I'm gonna go for watercolor. Watercolor bleeds through everything. So I need all of them that I have here with me. We need every color option. I'm gonna stick some paper towels behind here just to prevent the mess from going too far. I'm gonna start painting now, and in a rare turn of events, I decided to just wing it, which I hardly ever do. In fact, going in completely without a plan usually makes me unsettled, but I don't know, I just wanted to just dive right in and see what happens. Pretty quickly, it became clear that I'm painting some sort of weird landscape, so I'm just gonna go with that and just keep on adding and reinforcing this idea of a psychedelic landscape. And I'm thinking this actually does look kind of cool, although it did lose a little bit of its soul when it dried. On the bright side, it did manage to create some really cool bleed, which of course was the goal. But now I still have this, and I don't think that it's complete. The point of this prompt is that bleeding through pages is usually something that we have to deal with in these prompt books. We have to find clever ways to cover it up, fix it. So I thought it might be kind of interesting to have one page in the book where you actually let it happen and then try to work with it and not against it. This definitely isn't my favorite page ever, but it was kind of fun to do, and it was nice to just chill and do some experimenting.
Oh gosh. Trash. Oh! Naked.
these mini clay planters. I'm gonna gesso these as well. I may have been able to get away without it though, because this surface is just perfect for painting on. Okay, they're all now ready for their makeover. For each of these little planters, I'm gonna be painting a two-tone look, with the bottom being one color and the little rim being a nice contrasting color. All right, here they are. They honestly do look nice as they are, so I decided to go ahead and draw one of my blobs. Now I'm going in with the color, and the idea was to match the blob to the trim color, but I used regular paint on one and Posca's on the other, so the colors are slightly different. I just knew it was going to be so much easier to paint these blobs with Posca's, so I'm just going to have to get over the fact that the pink that I'm using is slightly different. Finally, I'm going to varnish each of my little pots, but they still look a little incomplete. So I decided to go ahead and fill them up with some very dusty white pebbles. I'm going to stick some little artificial succulents in there. Okay, so from very plain and boring clay pots to my bright and happy kind of custom planters. Here is my big beefy paintbrush. Let's paint on it. And like every good painting project does, this is gonna start with some gesso. Let's get a nice glob of that and go right in for the bristles. Ah, that's nice. Now after that nice coat of gesso, the bristles are all in one piece and the whole thing is nice and ready for paint. But first, I have an idea. I decided to try to make it look like this brush has thick, wet paint on it. And since puffy paint is nice and 3D, I thought it would work really well to get that effect. So I've just smothered that on. Finally, the brush is ready to decorate. I'm gonna whip up a quick brown color. That looks nice. And this is gonna go on the handle as the wood color. In the moment, I felt like the color was a little bit too dark. I ended up going over that with a lighter color because I actually think that that dark color
was kind of nice.
So the bristles, I'm gonna paint them bristle color. I did feel like this color was a little bit too dark, so I decided to lighten that up. So here we go. I'm gonna paint the paint rainbow. So it looks like the brush has been dipped into a big tub of rainbow paint. All right, we got the paint painted. I'm going to move on to the next phase, which involves my very fancy metallic paints. This I'm gonna be using on this thing. It's like a metal scrunchie for the bristles. So very quickly, I'm gonna paint the metallics, do some little touch-ups and even things out while I'm at it, pop on some little juicy highlights, bring it to life. Switching gears, I'm gonna add a nice bold cartoony wood grain to the paintbrush handle to give that some detail. Now that that's done, I think I've maxed out what I can really do on this.